Hey friends, this is probably gonna be my best video and audio setup for some time. I might try getting a mic stand, I might try recording the video somewhere else, but I do think that, this is probably gonna be my setup for the next 50 to 100 videos or so. I'm pretty happy with the camera, pretty happy with the mic, and we'll see how it goes. I want to do, I have a playlist in my YouTube channel for Singapore content, and I haven't been uploading much. And I'll be honest, it's because I do feel like I should do my research, So which is, I, if I'm, it's like a double, it's not a double-edged sword. It's like I feel two ways about it. On one hand, I do think it's useful to say what I already know in my head. So it's like a conversation. So it should be like if you met me at a bar and we're talking about it, and I don't have time to research every single question that you might have for me in the moment. And yeah, I do eventually want to do very kind of comprehensive, intelligent, well researched, well summarized videos that are great, like essays, right? But before I do that, I do want to just talk, right? And somehow I just feel a bit self-conscious about talking about Singapore, which is funny to think about because when I was like 17, I used to blog about Singapore in a very opinionated way, in a very confident and arrogant way even. And I enjoyed that to some degree, but I guess I did face certain kinds of blowback. I did face certain kinds of criticism that I agreed with, right? And but still, I do think that I'm older now. I have more experience. I know more. I've done more reading. I can't remember every single thing that I've learned off the top of my head, and I guess I'm a bit self-conscious about that. But let's just talk. Let's just have fun. Let's just try things out, and if I don't get things right, I can correct myself in the comments. I can make new videos. If anything's really bad, which I don't think is going to happen, I can delete it or unlist it, right? Let's go. Okay, so today I want to make a video about the idea that Singapore is sterile. It's a phrase that's pretty sticky. I have my laptop open on the side with a thread that I put together once of, let me just read the thread to you. I'll link to it in the comments, which is that roughly every year there's some new content about Singapore that's exactly the same as all the past content. I have a list of this somewhere. And so this started with me quote tweeting Jim Jeffries, who traveled to Singapore to talk about the country's lack of freedoms. And then, I have older links. In 1993, what's her name? Sandy Sanford wrote an article called The Intelligent Island. And, so the it's by Wyatt, and I believe it's by Wyatt. Yes, it's by Wyatt. And the first sentence is, we asked Sandy Sanford to tell us whether technology will ultimately liberate the intelligent island. And, it's just, there is this condescension there that, and people say, the paternalistic policies that seem to have worked for Singapore in the past may not be appropriate in tomorrow's information age. And there's quotes like, at worst, its brittle authoritarian society will stagnate. In such a political climate, censorship is inevitable and to a Westerner, disturbingly acceptable. I get it. It's your perspective, right? 1993. And also in 1993 was William Gibson's Disneyland and the Death Penalty. And I could probably do a whole video about that one essay, which I might do someday, maybe. But, there's a quote that's like, perhaps Singapore's destiny will be to become nothing more than a smug neo-Swiss enclave of order and prosperity amidst the sea of unthinkable weirdness. Dear God, what a fate. And then, it keeps going. In 1995, someone from, the link is from MIT. It's a quote by Rem Koolhaas. And it's a PDF. Goodness. Fuck it. The quote says, it is shown with pride, not shame. They think there will be no crime. We think there can be no pleasure. In 2013, Danny Dover said, I would describe my time living in Singapore as sterile. I had everything I needed to be comfortable, but I didn't have anything that inspired me. I would like to personally apologize for not inspiring Danny Dover. I'm sorry that we were not inspiring enough for you. 2010, Cassandra James, 5 reasons not to travel to Singapore. A society gone mad with rules. You hardly dare breathe in Singapore in case you do something that's against the law. Catherine Kutz, 2018, Singaporeans have no soul. Thailand's military government wants to turn the chaotic metropolis of Bangkok into a kind of Singapore, tidy, sterile, and easily controllable. New York Times, 2019. From its immersive airport art to its hyper-engineered skyline, Singapore offers a sci-fi vision for the present day. There's another one somewhere that I posted on Facebook, but not on Twitter, and you get the idea. It's, and I'm not gonna be in denial about it. And there's this there's this thing, right, which is that it's like there's truth to that, right? I will concede that when I have, and there's Singapore's relationship with the world beyond Singapore, and then there's Singapore's relationship with itself. There's the conversations that I've had with my friends, artists, writers, journalists, right? And we internally, and I have to be very careful about this, I feel, right? We complain internally with ourselves. It breaks our hearts that we don't have more press freedom. We don't. It's changing, right? In my lifetime, it's changed dramatically, and people describe me online as one of the most opinionated people they've met. I've been building a reputation as someone who's very expressive, very thoughtful, and kind of like I'm a Singaporean, but I violate certain assumptions that people have about what a Singaporean must necessarily be like. But I also have to admit, I am a bit of an outlier. Most Singaporeans are not like me. I am very much a child of the internet. I'm very much a child of libraries. And again, I have to say that I think the current generation, the current teenagers right now, they are very different than, I would say that the average teenager right now, it seems to me, is more media savvy, media conscious, more tuned in with the world than most people of previous generations. I would say my generation, like the millennials born in around 1990, that's when I was born, we were kind of like in the transition. So every generation is kind of carries the torch forward, right? And I am not a fan of how sterile Singapore can be, but I am doubly annoyed and frustrated over the years with the repetitiveness of the description of Singapore as sterile. Do you see what I'm saying? There's multiple things happening at once, and very few people seem willing to take the time to appreciate the complexity of the situation. We didn't just wake up one morning and decide, let's be very boring. Let's be boring as fuckers. And my interpretation of why Singapore is the way it is, and I will acknowledge that it is, it's safe, it's clean, there is a rule of law that most people in most countries would describe as authoritarian. I am undecided about whether or not Singapore is authoritarian. I have been in conversations where I have to agree with all of the things that people say about it, but it's just there's two ways of talking, right? You can talk in a way that is kind of convergent and closed, right? I this is my country. I want it to be better. I want it to be a place that can be more expressive. I want it to be a place with more freedom. I want it to be a place that's lively and cheerful and it isn't entirely not those things. It's there if you look for it. And some will say Asians in general, we just express, again, I don't like talking in generalizations. But I will say, when I went to San Francisco in last year, 2019, right, I did end up striking up conversations with strangers at a much higher rate than I typically do walking around in Singapore. Strangers in San Francisco would just come up to me and say, hey, nice t-shirt, nice, I like your earring, I like your jewelry, right? I don't get that in Singapore, and that's just, it's a different cultural norms, right? There's would I like to have more random conversations with random Singaporeans? Yeah, it would be nice. Do I think that Singaporeans are fundamentally unapproachable? I don't think so. I think that I have had conversations with strangers. It's just, it's just different norms. There is a condescension to the idea that the way that people, outsiders particularly, describe Singapore. And even when they're right, it's just the way that they talk about it. It's like, sometimes travelers describe Singapore as Asia light. It's the training ground for you to get comfortable in before you go to other parts of Asia that are more, I don't know what you're looking for. You're looking for something exotic. You're looking for something sexy and scary and deviant and different than what you're used to in the West. It's and I do think that my friends, at least, and I have like Twitter friends from all over the world, I think that they are more thoughtful. And at some degree, what I'm asking for is for the whole world to become more thoughtful. And I know that that's a naive thing to want. And how I approach this is, okay, if I can't make the whole world more thoughtful, I can start with the people around me, right? I can start with myself, right? And that's what I'm doing. And I was in a Zoom call earlier today, and somebody asked, and he's also Singaporean, and he asked me, hey, it looks like you're so creative and making videos and Twitter and like long Twitter threads and ebooks, and like you're making a living as a creative, and like how do you do that? I want to do that, and I feel like as a Singaporean it's not possible, or it's not like I have internal roadblocks, and I feel like there's social, the environment isn't super encouraging of it. That's true. Every year or so, every couple of years, there is a Singaporean artist who is upset and depressed and writes about how they've spent their entire lives here trying to contribute to an art scene that doesn't seem to love them back. And like everyday Singaporeans don't seem to appreciate how, the value of the arts. I think there's a truth to that. I think we're getting better at it, but I want people to understand. I almost started talking about this and then I dropped it, right? I want people to understand why we became sterile. Singapore wasn't always sterile. It wasn't sterile in the 1800s. There was a time, or the 1900s, early 1900s. There was a time where Singapore was described as sin galore. Look it up. It's like, it was a free trade port. It's a port city, right? And people from all over the world came here. So lots of Indians from India, lots of Chinese people from China, lots of people from the Southeast Asian region, right? From Indonesia. Back then they might have been, Balinese and all the different subsets of the regions of Indonesia. People from Thailand, Vietnam, people from Arab people from the Middle East, right? Just all kinds of people would be passing through Singapore, which was a port city. And, a statistic that blew my mind was that in the early 1900s, I think, at some point, 1 in 4 Chinese adults in Singapore was addicted to opium. 1 in 4. Imagine 1 in 4 of the people around you being addicted to heroin or to, what's the thing that's sweeping, opiates, basically, right? It's opiate addiction. And understand that when Singapore has a draconian drug policy, right, which I am not a fan of. I don't like it. I don't support it. I think that we can do better than our current drug policies. But I understand it. I understand where it comes from. It comes from when a quarter of your people are addicted to opiates. Then you have to take drastic measures, right? And I do think that, now that we're living through a pandemic, like people understand a little bit better now how certain circumstances that may have been somewhat extreme will require, extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary action, right? And that can have repercussions and aftershocks, like down the line. And our relationship with drugs is one of them. Another thing is, I had it in my head and it's gone. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so just general society, law and order, and was that in the World War II happened, like 100,000 people or so died in bombings. And like the Japanese came and they bombed the shit out of us, right? My grandfather on my mother's side was hit by shrapnel from a Japanese plane, presumably, and he survived. But if he hadn't, then I wouldn't be here, right? And up until that point, before the war, people in Singapore, so you can't say Singaporeans yet because it was just people who were in Singapore, right? Subjects of the British, was it Empire then? Like British subjects in Singapore. and people who are just passing through, right? People would come to Singapore to earn money as migrant laborers or tradesmen or whatever, and then some of them would stay, some of them would leave, and they expected the British to take care of them, right? They expected the government of the time to take care of them, and they were failed. The British failed the people of Singapore. They did. The Japanese came through Malaya on bicycles, and Singapore fell, and there were systematic killings of tens of thousands of people, probably 100,000 people, and that is a very, very traumatic event. I have a let me look this up, right? I have a Twitter thread about this, which is that Sok Ching, 50 to 100,000 men who did. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find this in a matter of seconds, but should I search Japanese occupation? No, how do I find this? Our inheritance. This is some funny shit I'm trying to do real time. All right, yeah. When outsiders talk about the drug laws and the mandatory conscription, which is that we have to serve in the military, and how creepy clean everything is, they never seem to get that there is a pain in that. That, like 3 to 5% of the population, the entire population, 3 to 5% were killed by foreign invaders. Like, for context, like 9/11 killed 0.00009% of Americans. 0.000. Like, if even and with such a, it's a tragedy, right? Thousands of people died. But with such a small percentage of people dying, you then went on to have the war on terror and spent like trillions of dollars, at least $1 trillion, I think several $1 trillion, to kill the man who was responsible, right? And there's this tremendous effort. And similarly, like, I don't mean any disrespect. What I mean to say is that you have to understand 3 to 5% of everyone killed by foreign invaders. Like, that has an impact on your psyche as a country, right? It shakes you up. And, I have a lot of feelings. We are the grandchildren. We are the legacy of pain and suffering, right? And, we had decided to, as a country, in my opinion, we just decided that we have been severely beaten up and pissed on, and, we decided to steel ourselves and be a tough motherfucker in a cruel world, right? Like, and we made sacrifices, and we debate internally about whether those sacrifices are worth it. We still do. But like, I want people to understand that broader context, and understanding also, the cool thing is understanding that the sterility of Singapore is downstream of what happened in the war, right? Means that there's no reason why we have to remain sterile indefinitely. It's not something intrinsic to Singaporeans. It's the whole country having a certain kind of PTSD, right? Trauma response to war. And it's a small country, so we have conscription. I have a video about that. And I believe that we are becoming less sterile by the year, right? By the month. And we have artists, we have poets, we have theater people, we have people we have a generation of people who worked really hard, put aside their personal creative dreams to make money and to be economically secure, so that their children can potentially live their dreams, right? There's this quote, I think by Jefferson, I'm not sure, but there's this quote that's something like, I study war and diplomacy, blah blah blah, so that my sons can study architecture and something, and so that their sons can study whatever else it is that they study. And so there is this recovery over generations, right? Which people are not used to thinking about, because I don't know, I guess we're very used to thinking about ourselves. And I guess what I hoped to convey in this video is that I'm Singaporean. I love being Singaporean. I have my concerns and frustrations with Singapore. There are things that I don't like. I don't like our drug policies. I don't like our treatment of LGBT people, which I think is getting better, but its progress can't happen fast enough because people are still suffering. I think that in general we still have, shackles in our thinking to some degree, like societally. But I don't want to make this like a competition between countries. I think that's not healthy. I think it is. I will say that I have been amused by the fact that a lot of the people that used to criticize Singapore, the Americans, for example. Again, I don't want to kick Americans while they're down, but like, what's going on, guys? Like, I'm not saying that our way is right and your way is wrong, but I'm saying that, maybe don't be so quick to judge other people for the choices that they make. And maybe we can all be more supportive and I'm not saying to excuse things that are inexcusable, and my wife is really great on kind of holding our, like, if you follow her on Twitter, she does these things like these elaborate threads kind of about the courts and about the just injustice in our society. And I'm proud to see it. I'm proud to see that there are people, and I see young people all the time on Twitter, speaking up about things that they find objectionable. And there's a Lee Kuan Yew quote even to American journalists where he talks about how the young must be idealistic. The young must believe, they must want a better world, right? And how do we get it? We get it by trying, right? And so if you still think Singapore is a sterile place, I'm not going to be able to persuade you otherwise. And I will admit, it's, when I come back to Singapore, I enjoy how everything just works. There's all the buses, all the roads are clean, there's food at all times of the day. It's really good. And I do wish we had a livelier art scene. I think we will see it happen. I'm repeating myself at this point, so I'm just gonna end the video here. Not a huge fan of how long it took me to say these things and how windy I am, and I don't know if I covered everything I want to cover, but I'm just gonna post it and let me know what you think in the comments. Ask me questions if you have any. I might do a more comprehensive video essay of some kind next time, but for now, this is it. Thanks for hanging out. Done.